Welcome to Following on India. I'm Jarrod Kimber here on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube page. We have with us Saurabh Somani as well, and we're going to go through, I don't know, could Australia be further behind in this game? I'm trying to think of another idea. It was incredible listening to the commentators, even Ravi Shastri among them, going on about how brave Pat Cummins was coming out to bat and everything. And I was just like, he's just going to go out, guys. It's a terrible decision to send out a night watch out that early in the day. Like everything Australia did towards the end of certainly in that last session, was absolutely horrendous and went completely the wrong way, Saurabh.
Yeah, I think they were just frazzled minds, Pat Cummins, yeah, it was a brave decision to come out, but do you really want to come out after having bowled so much under the hot sun, having captained the whole way through, having, seen all your plans go up in smoke? Are you really in the mental space to be a night watchman against a Jasprit Bumrah? I don't think so, and that's what it proved, although he got out to Siraj, but yeah, it was just not maybe the greatest decision, although it was still brave, I'll give him that, but it was not the greatest decision. But what I was thinking is, it could have all been so different if India had batted better in their first innings, because then they would have taken up a large part of day one when the seam movement was at its highest. And then Australia would have been batting on day two, and where Mitchell Starc could bat for more than an hour. So who knows how the test would have panned out and how much lead Australia would have taken. What do you think, Jarrod? Did India do themselves a favor by getting out early?
It's one of those things that obviously you can't plan for it or anything, right? Like it's not like I had people saying, maybe they should have even declared, and it's like, well, you don't know that these things are going to happen, but ultimately, it's a bit like the New Zealand Test match, isn't it? In Bengaluru, where it was like everything went right. If New Zealand got the absolute best of the conditions in that game to do what they needed to do, and the same thing has happened for India here. The problem for Australia, though, is their fast bowlers are now going to be exhausted. I know there's a bit of a break before the next test, so it's not the end of the world. They've already gone through about 4 different cycles of plans. None of their fast bowlers can bowl bouncers, apparently, so Marnus has to do it. Virat Kohli now looks confident. KL Rahul now looks confident. Jaiswal, after a duck, has sprung back into life. Like, there's a lot of issues there for Australia to have to deal with. So even if you're right, and I think you broadly are right that the conditions went for India, it almost doesn't matter anymore, right? Like, it's gone so far against Australia at this point that having a little bit of luck in that first game. We saw what happened in the New Zealand series. They got a little bit of luck in the first game, but then they were like, oh, we can beat this side, right? And that's certainly what India is thinking right now. I mean, that was disastrous at the end of the day, watching the Australians come out. No one thought McSweeney was going to make runs. Not McSweeney, not his family, not his friends, not anyone at the ground. We all thought he was going to go out in the shadows against Jasprit Bumrah, right? And then, forget the night watch, because, okay, fine. But Marnus, you felt exactly the same. A similar thing was going to happen with Marnus. So they look even worse now than they did earlier. It really was a brutal smashing in the face by India.
And it was so unexpected if you just think back to what people were saying 3 days ago before the test series started, because India is coming off the back of a 3-0 whitewash at home, which was completely shocking to the cricket world. And suddenly, they're coming and smashing Australia, who were, after India got beaten 3-0, Australia were the best test team in the world on form, let's say. And then India go there and put up this sort of performance. Does this mean that New Zealand are the new best team in the world?
Yes, it does. That's official. New Zealand are the best team in the world. They get the belt. No, I mean, it's ridiculous. The form guide of recent cricket is so hilarious, because you think of Bangladesh smash Pakistan in the face, and they literally haven't been in a test match since they beat Pakistan in Pakistan. And yet Pakistan came back to beat England in the very next series that they played. Like, the form line of modern test cricket is just completely nuts at the moment. So it's all over the shop, and this continues. I just wanted to ask you about Jaiswal. We talked about him being a bit more compact yesterday and a little bit everything else. But why do you think he's so good at long innings? That's the thing that I find most interesting with him. He just seems to be able to bat forever.
He's been that way since, he's still young, but he's been that way since he was younger also. He, he's he's had that, he scored a list A double century, when he was just hardly 10 matches old for Mumbai. And I, I remember speaking to him before he hit that double century, when he was still sort of unknown. And in the middle of talking to me, it almost seemed like he was not even in Mumbai's first 11 then, but it almost seemed like he was in the zone, because suddenly he snapped out of it and he said like, "But why am I talking to you?" I was like, because this is an interview, we are doing it." He's like, "Yeah, okay, but I'm in the zone." He told me then, "I'm in the zone." And then 3 days later, he went and hit the double century. And then even when he had, immediately after that, he went to the Under 19 World Cup. He had a man of the series performance there. And then he was picked up in the IPL. He had a horrendous first season in the IPL. But I remember the thinking was then that you have to stick to this guy, because he has basically bossed every level he has been at. It is just that at the IPL, he sort of had a blip. But when a guy has come through every level and bossed it on the way up, you think that there's something special about this guy. And there is clearly, I don't know what is it. It's forged on the Mumbai streets or Maidans, or, the done to death story of his struggle. Yes, of course, he had a struggle that was more, stark than most people when he was coming up. But now everybody knows, yes, he lived in a tent. Yes, he sold pani puri, which is an Indian snack, sometimes sold it to his teammates after the day's play. But that was, many years ago. And since then, he has done enough in international cricket and in the IPL and elsewhere that we don't need to go back to that every time to explain why he has this hunger. He just has it. He's really good. That's why.
It's interesting when you look at it. I looked at his first class record today. So a couple of games in, he makes two first class hundreds, and one of them's 103, and the other one's 100 exactly, right? And from that moment onwards, I don't think he's made a first class 100 under 146. Like it's like a coach said to him, "Well, you really shouldn't get out just after you make 100." And he's like, "Okay, got you." And he just goes off and he just does it. It's ridiculous. The other thing I think that helps him with the big scores is that he's got this incredible, I think he averages something like 105 or 110 in Test cricket, rotating the strike. So other batters, very good players average around 40, 45. Like rotating the strike is, a fairly normal thing you're going to get out regularly doing. He just doesn't do that. Forget about him, though, because some other bloke made runs today. What's your opinion on Virat Kohli?
Yeah, that guy who nobody's talking about, he made runs. But it was, honestly, just as a cricket fan, it was good to see him back to fluency. That's the Virat Kohli that thrills cricket watchers when he bats like that. Especially that the charge from 70 to 100 was insane. He was batting like it was power play. I think, I don't know, there was a lot of talk before this series about whether Steve Smith has found his hands again. I don't know if he has. We'll know tomorrow when he comes out to bat against Jasprit Bumrah. But Virat Kohli has definitely found his feet. He was moving so much more decisively. He was, getting, even when Nathan Land was getting some to really spin viciously, the way Kohli was out with his front pad, sticking it out away from off stump, so that even if it hits the pad, he's not hit in line, and doing it much more decisively than he has done in some of his more, skittish, jittery test innings where he's got run out, bowled off full tosses and stuff like that. This was the Virat Kohli that we have seen for most of his career. And it's fitting that, he's back in Australia. What is it about Australia that brings out the best in Kohli?
I think the ball just comes on quicker, and that just suits his game. I've always said that I think that's the reason everyone goes on about him chasing in limited overs cricket, but I think partly he likes playing at night when the ball comes on a little bit faster. And for all the talk about how it suits his personality, I'm not saying it doesn't. I just think he likes it when the ball is coming onto his bat, and that's certainly what happens in Australia. Interestingly enough, we saw today his 19th reverse sweep in 3,645 deliveries in my database against spin. He is willing of recent times to sweep a little bit more, to slog sweep, to reverse sweep. He's playing a lot more for the team. Like, we've seen some pretty torturous moments where he's played on to try and get his 100 before. They still would have liked to declare maybe 10 or 15 minutes earlier, but he was certainly going for that 100 for the team rather than just for himself.
I think, I don't know, I can't recall too many instances. There was one in the World Cup, but other than that,
That
I
was
don't
bad.
think he's been a guy who's, yeah, I don't think he's been a guy who slows down for his hundreds
I
so
wouldn't
much.
say he slows
Or
down for his
maybe,
100, but I wouldn't say, I don't think 5 years ago he would have sped up for his 100 the way that he did now. I mean, he plays a lot more team cricket than he has before, and he's always played to win. So I'm not saying he's one of those players who's in a bubble and doesn't notice the rest of the world. But I think these days he's much more about, if I get out for 90 odd, that's fine, but let's try and get these runs as quickly as possible. I'll get my 100 and then we'll get off the field.
yeah, maybe there's something to that. And the sweeps thing, I think he brought out the sweep. It was in cold storage. It was so much in cold storage, it had almost expired.
Mm.
But he brought it out during the IPL, in the second half, especially of the IPL, when he realized that what the impact player does to your 11, it unlocked something in his game. And he basically just started sweeping hard and with great effectiveness during the second half of the IPL. And once he did that, we knew that, yeah, he can play the sweep. It's just that he doesn't want to too much. He had built his game differently, but now we know that he can bring it out when needed. And that's what he did. But I still like that stat about 3,900 balls and 19 sweeps. Like,
19
did
reverse
you,
sweeps.
or reverse sweeps, right? No,
Yeah.
he, he sweeps and reverse both he brought out during the IPL second half. He was reverse sweeping
Yeah,
also.
no, exactly.
Mm,
So I
mm.
would say, so there's 19 reverse sweeps. I would say about half of those reverse sweeps would be in the last 12 months. And I remember looking at him when he played against England in the test matches. I think it was against England, I was looking this up, where during that series, I was comparing him to the England players. And like, he'd almost played no sweeps of any kind in the last 10 years in test cricket, outside of the odd slog sweep. So it really is a shot that he'd put away and then he's brought back. I thought that was great. Now, you have a hot take about Dan Vettori here, Saurabh. And that wasn't something I was expecting to say today, but what's your hot take?
My I don't know how hot to take it is, but
It's a pretty hot take.
I
I
wanted,
think it's one pepper at least, 1.5 peppers.
yeah, 1.5 peppers. That's good. But what do you think of Dan Vettori not being there at the first test, especially when we see Australia under the pump like this? He's the assistant coach. He's probably like, does a lot of the bowling coach stuff also, and the bowlers have really copped it. But he's not there because, understandably, I'm not having a go at Vettori at all. I think it's understandable that he has to be at the IPL auction if he's the head coach of a franchise there. It's a mega auction. So he has to be there. But because he has to be there, he can't be there for the first test. What do you think about that? Like, yeah, what do you think? Is that right? Is that wrong? Is that just the way it is?
I think they made a decision a while back, didn't they? Because I think Andrew McDonald was Australian coach and the coach of a franchise, wasn't he? Or maybe even, was it just one franchise? I think it was. So it's not the first time we've seen it before with Australian cricket where they've done that. And I suppose that's the reality of modern life, right? Like Vittori probably gets, well, not probably, definitely gets paid more to be coaching in the IPL than he does to be assistant coach for Australia. It's not the only one. Do you remember who was it? Jimmy Anderson missed a coaching gig for England because he was off playing golf. So I suppose this is a better excuse than being off playing golf from that point of view. But you're right. It's a really weird thing, and it's something that cricket has to get used to. But I do find it really weird because like people will say things along the lines of, "Oh yeah, but we could cover him when he's not here." And I always think when I hear that, well, does that mean that he shouldn't have been the coach then, or like he wasn't that good in the first place? So I think it's weird. I don't think it's the reason they're in the position they are in this match. But I'm with you. It's part of modern cricket, and it's a little bit icky. I'll ask you this though: what's worse, getting Marnus Labuschagne to come in and bowl bouncer after bouncer because you're trying to protect your seamers, and then giving up on that terrible idea and getting him to bowl 5 foot down leg side, or Dan Vettori not being there for the game? I'm going to go with probably the Marnus. I mean, that looked ugly, didn't it? I did like it though. Like Adam Gilchrist saying to Michael Vaughan, "Oh, you would never have seen Australia do this before." And it's like, we've seen Australia be defensive. Every time Australia is slightly defensive, like a commentator will always say, "Well, we've never seen them be defensive before." It's like, no, we have. It's okay. Like, we've seen them put 9 fielders on the boundary. Just chill out.
Maybe it's just Manas, wanting to show that he can do everything. He has not lost spin bowling just because he was bowling bouncers. So he's just come to, show that he can bowl. But just going back to the Vettori thing, here is the hot take. Maybe we should have windows for the IPL auction also, not just for the IPL itself.
It is a bit weird that the auction is clashing with an Indian Test match, isn't it? Like, if I'm the BCCI, I don't think that's what I want to happen. Like, I understand that one comes after the other and everything else, but I mean, emotionally, I kind of want the Indian Test team to be the thing, especially now they're winning. I want them to be the main story, and then when that dies down, then I want the auction to happen. I think this is probably a mistake having them clash with each other.
If we want to get into conspiracy theory territory, then maybe they scheduled it like that because they thought India might be losing the test, so it's a good distraction.
It's probably more to do with the fact that all the weekends are taken up by the test series, I would say. Is that not?
Yeah. I mean, there's no conspiracy.
Right?
No,
I like the conspiracy theory. Right. I mean, I let's go with the conspiracy at all times. But yeah, I do think it's probably more to do with that. Sorry, go.
This has happened before also. In 2018 also, in the there was the mega auction during the series with South Africa.
Yeah.
When India adored South Africa. Yeah.
I think it's happened a couple of times. Not always with India playing, but certainly with other teams. And it does cause some problems as well. What do you think was the most embarrassing thing for Australia today? I should preface this by saying I thought they bowled much better today. I thought the pitch helped them a little bit more, and they stayed in, but they never really looked like coming back into that game, other than that bizarre little mini collapse, which I still don't really understand.
Yeah, that was just, I think, one of those passages of play that happens. But the most embarrassing, I don't know, it's tough to look beyond poor Manas. He bowled bouncers that weren't effective. He bowled leg spin that wasn't effective. He was shielded by a night watchman, and then he got out anyway. So I don't know how you can go lower than that.
That's a pretty bad day of cricket, all things considered. Yeah, I'll give you that. How many runs will India win this test match by, Saurabh?
How many runs? 300.
I mean, at the moment, that seems being friendly to Australia, but of course they'll come out. They won't be batting under their shadows tomorrow. If this wicket deteriorates any more, though, and the way Bumrah is bowling on it specifically, I think they're going to be in all sorts of trouble. But there's no doubt India just absolutely smashing this game. It's obviously a case of when, not if, at this point. Saurabh Somani will be back with me tomorrow here on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. I'm Jarrod Kimber here for Following On India.